Welcome everyone. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at the program design for different sports. So this will be a follow-up from the theory that you've already seen. So in today's lecture particularly, we're going to be looking at two very different sports. First would be badminton and second would be swimming. And we're going to understand what are the different factors to consider when designing a program for not just each of these sports, but also for the different individuals within each of these sports. So let's get started. So, to start off our conversation, uh, what are the fundamental similarities or differences when we talk about badminton and swimming as two different sports?
Okay, the first thing, one is played on land, one is performed in the water. Okay. Muscles now which are required, well, muscles are the same, but the actions performed are different. So one would be that badminton is played with an equipment. There's a racket, there's a shuttle. So like I've said, I think in one of the lectures, the shuttle wins the points. It's not the person. It could be anybody behind the racket as long as the shot goes right. Swimming, on the other hand, is not about an equipment reaching on time. It's your body. So when you dive in, it's your body. Okay, you do a 50-meter race, you press the touchpad, it's your hand. There's no equipment which can manipulate a shot like in other sports like cricket, where you play a square cut and the ball goes a certain way, or you hit a six a certain way, so on and so forth. So this becomes the first sort of basic difference between them. Another important aspect, and when we design programs, we should keep this in mind, that in swimming you breathe through the mouth. Okay, you have to unless it is in backstroke, because your face is up, you're facing the other way, so you breathe through the nose. But majority of them, you just breathe in through the mouth. So the lung capacity and the way the oxygen is used is different. Um, in other sports, we tell people not to do much mouth. Some invariably happens, but majority we say, okay, breathe properly. How we're designed to. Swimming, it's a different complete aspect. So while designing programs, these are things we have to keep in mind. That one sport has the ground, there's sort of impact. Some sports don't have the ground. Okay, you have to learn to create uh, power from not pushing anything. You're just floating, and now you want to start. Okay, or you take a dive, and it's kind of, swimming is more momentum based. You dive in and you're just carrying that momentum on constantly. Okay, you don't stop and start, and stopping and starting, you can just imagine. Okay, now in swimming there are some strokes like the breaststroke, and there's what's if I'm not wrong, called the dead point. Okay, where in a breaststroke, because there's no momentum, the action is different. You do a kick and you go ahead, you pull, and there's a point at which that momentum stops. Unlike in freestyle, where it's like a uh, torpedo, which is going in and the arms are just taking you, cutting through the water. But then stroke like breaststroke is where you do a stroke and you stop. Next stroke, stop.
Yeah.
So that stop again becomes different. And breaststrokers generally, that's why I tend to have very good upper body development, because they just need so much more power, so much more power coming from the pectorals, and just pulling. They don't have tricep extension happening there, unlike the others, because they just go and pull powerfully. There's no action here. Okay, so these are things which I think we need to remember when we design programs for both these sort of type of athletes.
Right. And I think it's also interesting to note that within both of these sports, each sport has different events within it. Swimming has, the backstroke and the breaststroke and the different variations. Whereas in badminton, we also have the singles and doubles. So I think that itself can bring about differences in the kind of preparedness that an athlete must have.
Exactly. Yeah, and it applies to every sport. Football, cricket. Not everybody is a fast bowler in cricket. So if we say that, okay, we are training somebody and we are designing a program, you don't design a program for cricket or for badminton. You design a program for that particular requirement. Okay. Now, here I think it's important that we sometimes say, people, that badminton specific training, cricket specific training, football specific. Sometimes when people are new into the field, and maybe even I have made that mistake probably decades ago, where you assume that there's a certain form of training for a certain sport, but then you realize that more than that sport, you want to break down the position of the player, and then you want to break down the movements that he or she does, and then within that you want to improve the ones that they're weak at. best person to tell you is the athlete who tells you my smash is weak, work on their strength to hit a smash more powerful. Okay, and you've done your job. Somebody says my back sort of feels a bit tight when I play, sometimes it gets tired, work on that. Somebody says my legs don't last, work on that. I think if somebody has to ask about designing a program, something simple and effective, it is this: work on what the player needs. Don't assume, don't decide that this is badminton specific, so I have to do skipping. Okay, because it is badminton specific, I have to do some movements on the court. A lot of times, strength and conditioning coaches will go through this. They'll find that some movements are more cultural, okay, to a sport. There are certain beliefs that are held over the years, right? And especially in sports which are more, which have a lot of variables, like badminton, cricket, because there's so many things that are there which can make you win. Unlike in athletics or in swimming, where very clearly it's your body you have to use and you have to go fast, okay, and the strokes are repetitive. Badminton, on the other hand, cricket, various sports, there are sometimes these cultural beliefs because some stars train like that, okay, and then they won probably a top competition, okay, and it becomes the stuff of legends. Then they talk about, oh, how that star used to run uphill. Somebody else would say that star used to run behind a motorcycle. Somebody would say that, oh, that person used to do this many push-ups. And then the eating parts comes in, that, oh, that person used to eat so many eggs or so much of uh, protein from vegetables, milk, whatever. I mean, there's a lot of cultural things. There's a step that way we make legends out of people, and then sort of we just assume that's what. And sometimes there's a lot of stories around it. It need not be real. So when you as a strength and conditioning coach comes in, okay, you have to always know to be rational and to be reasonable. Even if you found out that, okay, some person had done this, okay, and that person, you have to then ask, maybe there's something good to learn. Okay, but you still have to use your faculties of learning to understand that, okay, what was the frequency of exercises, the intensity, the time, the type. Were they working on agility? Were they working on reaction time? Were they working on coordination, balance, power? So many things. This is where we come in. It's like we have filters, by which we are able to check an exercise and figure out this is what this exercise does. So if some ex-champion had done it, then we need to understand that this would help maybe for this particular person. So if a champion person, for example, does maybe some impact training, okay, and we realize that, okay, this is what helps in hitting shots better, okay, and this is something especially for badminton I can explain. A lot of people do various exercises. Sometimes they'll do power cleans, they'll do your clean and jerks, maybe isometric work, a lot of core work. Tennis players also do that, right? Various, sometimes very fancy drills. If you want to improve your smash, okay, or if you want to improve your serve, what is it that happens when the racket connects to a ball in tennis or shuttle? There's impact, okay. How many people actually do impact training for the upper body? And something very simple that can be done for a lot of these sports, including maybe even in table tennis, is a simple hammer, a tire, controlled hits, okay. You do those, you are basically teaching the hammer to transfer power into the tire. Now the tire is not a hard object, so it absorbs shock, it's pretty safe for the hands, okay, but you're mainly teaching to take impact for the forearms. Now a hammer which is in your hand, which is probably maybe say 1.5 kilo or 1 kilo, then you're hitting with an X amount, it's definitely heavier than your racket. The impact is definitely harder than the racket connecting with a shuttle, okay. From there, the transfer of this impact helping you in your sport becomes so much higher, okay. Now to give you out, maybe even if I may call this like a secret, okay, you put the tire at a height where the racket connects the shuttle, and you go and hit, boom, okay, you are exactly hitting in the same trajectory where the shuttle needs to go. You are giving impact with something heavier. And when the person starts hitting smashes, very simple, straight away there's a difference. How many people do that? Don't. Like in the warm-up we have shown exercises for the eyes. How many people do? So if they do one, they don't. So there's a lot of small things which can be done. Okay, but sometimes we get very impressed with all the big things, the latest lift, the latest lifting techniques, heavy weights, so we can post it. You sometimes don't need a lot of things. We need to do specific work to improve specific things.
Right.
Heavy weights improve strength. Do you need strength? How much do you need for a sport like badminton?
Yeah.
So these are things which I think we need to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially that point, what you mentioned about posting things. I think with the way social media is, a lot of things posted really doesn't have a lot of context to it. We just assume that one person has done this exercise, and if it's an idol or if it's a champion or someone at the top level, that will fit me. But they don't consider, okay, how many years of training has this person doing? Is it correct for the sport? Is it correct for them? Is it something that is right for me at this point of time? I think all of those are never really included in the context of maybe like a 10-second video that's out there.
Absolutely. I remember a nutritionist had once told me, she said that somewhere people now, students have been coming and saying that, oh, there's this ex athlete who's a vegan and they still play. And then she was saying that, no, it becomes so difficult to make people understand that vegan is somebody who turned vegan,
Right.
who has eaten, that person, sports person happens to be from the north, so has had enough milk, dahi, paneer throughout life. A certain structure at a certain age they've turned vegan. Good for them. But for everybody else to think that I'll turn vegan. Okay. And then you have to ask which sport. What are the requirements of your sport? If you're into a very physically demanding sport, can you turn vegan with less protein? Can you still do it? Or is that person who's vegan doing a sport which suits? And again, there are genetics come. So many things. So we can't just copy and say like this is it. You know, we talk about, people give this example for a case in point, such as which is the biggest animal? Elephant. Which is the fastest animal? They'll say deer, though it's a cheetah, but people will say it's a deer, and so on and so forth. And what is this? And that's why you don't need to eat meat. Now, culturally, if you don't want to eat meat and stuff, it's a different topic, and the nutrition will cover. But I think sometimes these very general statements are very easy, like you to say that the elephant is the strongest, the tallest animal is the giraffe. So this can't be applied. We shouldn't apply this to sport, because we are answerable and accountable. We have to check who is there. If there's a person who's been eating meat, who's a non-vegetarian, who has enough protein, their choice. Okay, we have to create a program that sets them.
Yeah.
If there's somebody who doesn't eat, then we have to see what's the best we can do. But we can't have generic statements, that okay, lifting weights makes you strong. Can 2 kilos build strength? Okay, and one of the examples I've given in one of the lectures about faith is, if somebody takes a Olympic bar and just keeps doing that repeated with the most amazing technique in the world and does it 100 times, can we give them heavier weight and they'll say that I know how to break the world record because I've done this hundreds of times with the bar, exactly same costume and everything that the world champion wears, and I'm doing exactly the same movement, but there's not enough weight. So what? I have belief. So this is where logic, rational comes in. Okay, and I think this is when we design a program, we need to understand this part.
Yeah, great. So now, getting back to badminton and swimming, we've sort of discussed about the main differences between both of these sports. Now, I just want to get a little more specific about different individuals within each of these sports and how should our approach be towards them.
This is a very important question, very interesting, and people should listen to this. That even a sport like swimming, now badminton, there are various structures, various styles, right? Some people have different strokes. Some people are very good, they've got some good strokes. We say, that this person has an X amount of strokes, meaning with their hand they can send the shuttle to various angles. Okay, swimming is not like that. When you see a swimming race, if there's 8 people, okay, they dive in, and if it's freestyle, everybody is doing similar actions. Right? It's the same, right, left, dive, you reach. Okay, very simple. It's not like one guy is doing some different stroke and a fourth person is doing something different. Now still, in freestyle, okay, within the best in the world, if we check all the world record holders who existed, and when you look at that in slow motion, the strokes, the pulling angle becomes different. The position of the wrist, where the elbow comes out, how the reach is. Within swimming, a sport which is so fixed, that itself is different. We can even take the example of something like athletics. We look at a top, maybe runner, somebody like, if I may name Usain Bolt, considered one of the greatest 100-meter sprinters. Does he run the same like previous champions who've been there. There's Carl Lewis, who was there earlier, and various others. Even his competitors, do they all run and look the same? Though they're all running, there's so much difference in their running styles itself. The elbow position, the hand position, everybody is different. You have to find what helps that person's unique style by adding strength and power to it. That's our job. Our job is not to say that this is how you run to become a champion, or because Usain Bolt does some forms of training, say that this is how you become a champion. And this, I think, is a very strong point that I'm bringing up, that sometimes as strength and conditioning coaches, we design programs thinking that this is it, and my program did this. Your program can only help the physical. That's what we've discussed from the beginning. So I think that clarity is important, that the individuals who come are different. Within even a sport like swimming, they will have different strokes. And we have to be wise enough to understand this. We cannot think that just because they are doing freestyle, they're all doing the same. Okay, top athletes, they don't have similarities. Right? Within a sport, how can you expect somebody who's at a state level or who's just starting off to have a certain style? So a lot of the top players who are out there, or swimmers who are out there, they know how to get the best speed from a particular small maybe deviation. Okay, because ultimately in swimming you want to go from point A to point B fastest. Okay, it's not about showing technique which you assume is the best. It's about getting from here to there. Okay, the medal is given to the person who reaches first. It's not given to the person with the most beautiful technique. Okay, so we need to understand these things, that when it's individuals, you adjust your training program according to that individual. Don't decide that this is my program, and this is where badminton specific training, swim specific training, football specific training, and so on and so forth. We have that this is how people train, and we just create programs. We love that. Now I've thought of this. Why do people like this though? One, I think it becomes easier to tell people that okay, we do something different, for our athletes. We don't train like how that academy trains or that center trains.
Just to stand out.
Just to stand out. One becomes that, and I think the second thing, within the sport, then we make everybody do the same drill, right? Everybody, like, you'll have the whole class running, and then they do certain drills, and I think that comes from liking uniformity. People like that thing when 10 people are doing the same move. 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4. We love when a whole group does something in unison. Okay, let's say everybody is doing something, and the more coordinated it is, I think the better it looks. So here we have to understand that in sports, especially when we're talking about sports like badminton or swimming, which are individual sports, okay, you have to work on the individual. Now, what about team sports? Right? We say, okay, fine, these are individual sports people. What about team sports? They need to train together, because all footballers play football. Again, we have to ask, are all having the same role? Is the goalkeeper having the same role as a forward, as the midfielder, as the one who's doing defense? Everybody has a different role, right? So how do we create a program for such teams, okay, which are sort of big? In the lectures, I've mentioned this, when it's a team or whether it's an individual, a team is also made of individuals. So if you have cricket players, there are different people with different bodies. Your program has to suit that individual for his body and help him or her improve in the aspect they want, or which maybe the coach has decided. If coach tells us, say a cricket bowler, the power, they wish there could be a little bit more speed, and they wish that the shoulder was less sore. Now that's your basic guideline. Make the shoulder powerful, let the shoulder feel less pain. You've done your job. But we can't just say cricket bowlers. Now all cricket bowlers, everybody get something, do something fancy, do a front squat, and then maybe do something else. So I think this is where we need to understand that individuals matter. You have to have a program which is very specific to that individual and to what they want. If that's not happening, what are we doing, And that's why a lot of time can be wasted.
Right. Yeah, perfect. So now, speaking about the actual training part for each of these sports, first up, maybe whether you're in a gym or whatever training setting, what would be some maybe specific equipments that are used either for badminton offer swimming, or what are some equipments that are more general that is readily available that can be very helpful for each of these sports?
Now, talking about badminton as a sport, uh, one can look at what is it ultimately that they want. Majority of the time, when we talk fitness, uh, we can look at it as hitting with power. So smash. The rest is lasting long with the lungs. Okay, and maybe your legs having endurance. So let's look at, if we just pick out now hitting a smash. Okay, uh, you need a good explosive jump. Okay, and the general standard movement in badminton, you'll notice there's a lot of sort of movement where there's stop start. So you need a lot of work on the quadriceps and other aspects of the legs as well, where there's deceleration. Okay, so stop start, because that part, it's called that with jhatkas, some people are that very tricky ones. They'll stop and they'll sort of last minute play a shot, and you think it was going back and you have to reach. So that constant sort of awareness, and that can be very tiring, especially people who play these type of games, which are more to do with a lot of um, what's the word for that?
Deception.
Deception is the right word, where they are so deceptive. You think it's going there and they play here. So playing against those players, a lot of top players will tell that it tires you more, because you're constantly anticipating this. So what should you do for that type of training? Train for that. Very simple. Train your muscles to be ready for that. We can't be just doing concentric training and thinking that why do I get so tired? Because you're working on different contractions. Okay. So you have to be training for the actions that you need, right? Now if somebody says I want to improve my smash, of course you have to then do various other compound movements, like the squats are involved, a strong core, a strong shoulder girdle. But what about if you add, like we said, the tire hits, so that the end point of that whole action, okay, is that whip action, which will come out much more stronger. What if you add extension, flexion, forearm work again? Okay, again you'll be needing less power from the rest of the body to produce that shot. And many strength and conditioning coaches, who go and study maybe in a university, do courses, come back, sometimes they don't have experience of the practical side on a court, what a player does. And time spent, allows you to understand that some people will not use a lot of shoulder, and some top coaches I've seen, they will just use a sort of small rotation from the shoulder and wrist to send that shot. And to send a shuttle with that same speed, somebody else might have to go and do this.
Right.
And now these are things only when you spend time you realize that this happens, because from a strength and conditioning point of view, we just assume that, oh, I have to do a power clean, I do a kettlebell swing, and then automatically it happens, because every person hits like this. So a lot of people, sometimes for badminton also, keep doing a lot of internal external rotation, where the belief is that the smash will come this way and I'll finish. Again, you have to spend time on court. But like I said, some people can produce a lot of power just from the wrist. The more they can produce from here, the less they have to use other aspects. Now, they can learn that skill by years and years of doing it, or you can build certain muscles and they can realize that I can just touch and it goes.
Right.
Okay, if there's impact training, you touch and it goes. If your wrist is stronger, you touch and it goes. Now comes one more aspect to badminton and tennis. There's the other aspect of grip. Okay. Your grip needs to be strong so that you can hold the shuttle, hold the racket, okay, with a strong grip. Maybe not get tired. Within the grip then comes, flexion, okay, of the fingers, thumb, that plays a role in the grip. And as they play, again, as a badminton player, you'd know, people who play know, the grip changes.
Correct, absolutely. There's so much of a variation, whether you're playing it from the forehand side, is it over the head, backhand, and even based on the event. Like if you're a doubles
Exactly.
player, if you're in the front, you're going to have a higher grip so that you can move the racket quicker. If you're on the back, you hold it lower because you want a longer
Exactly.
arm for the torque to come in.
Now, strength and conditioning coaches would think, hey, I never knew this. I just assumed, I can do a grip, I do this, and that's it. So this is where practical comes in, okay? And this is where you just can't come in thinking, I know it all, I'm here to change everything. You need to learn. I would say most strength coaches need to learn about the sport that they're working in, and then learn about it and employ exercises based on the various principles we've taught, okay? But the grip now, if you have to improve, one is impact. Second thing that can be improved, okay, is grip strength. Now, grip strength can be done with maybe a spring gripper, Good, that's good. But something even better, because we want to work every individual finger. You don't just, because here you're not just grabbing something and pulling. There's a lot of finger work that happens when the shot is played different. So you want your fingers to be strong. How can you do that? Get a newspaper. Okay, get a newspaper, crush it into a ball. So each individual finger is, starting with a two double-sized newspaper, working on it. Keep the ball in the hand. So this action, every finger working, okay, that again is strengthening your finger flexors. That is what you do. It will start helping you with playing shots where you change. Your fingers become stronger. Okay, so these are again things, where when we think we get these answers. Now, if somebody thinks that I'll just get a gripper and do it, it will work. But one problem with the gripper is that it won't work the fingers independently. You'll just hold the gripper here, spring, and you'll press. It's more becomes a palm action. The other issue becomes with the gripper is the range. The fingers don't open out. Okay, so again, any exercise where range is more is anyway better than anything with a short range. So this doing it, with a gripper versus this itself, there's so many changes. Now, one more thing here, again, to make something a small sort of region into so specific. Badminton players, as it is, grip a lot. Okay, so again, there's a lot of finger flexion that happens. The muscles that sort of make your fingers work, they sort of work hard throughout the day. So now we always talk about training agonists and antagonists. How many people do anything where they open the palm? So again, there are things available where you can wear a small sort of thing on the wrist, hold, and you open out the palms. So working the agonist muscles as well. They don't need as much work, but if you don't train them, that's almost like training your chest muscles and not training the retractors, or that's like training your quadriceps and not the hamstrings. Okay, so again, this is a small thing, but imagine if all this area gets strong: wrist flexion extension, elbow flexion extension, okay, grip, individual fingertips. Along with that, if you want to add the spring, fine, okay, then hammer, connecting, transferring force, okay, then along with that, all your major movements: shoulder presses, squats, bench presses, rows, this, that, and the other. Now just imagine how much you've got to transfer. Okay, you've got the major power, and then you finally tuned it into this to send it. Okay, and that is what is effective programming. Okay, so for badminton this can be done, and for everything it can be done like this. Okay, every movement can be broken down and made specific exercises can be done. I'll give an example now of swimming. If somebody says, okay, that for starts, people want to have good starts. Now during a start, what do? You get on the blocks. Okay, there's what's called a track start, and that's what's called the block start. Block start is where both legs are just there, you dive in. Okay, track start is one leg is behind and you dive. Depends, some people like to do the track start, some like to do the block start. Now you can't go there and tell them, that, oh, mechanically I think this is what, you can maybe explain and attempt, but don't be the expert on something like that just because you feel the track start gives. There are many people who do a block start. Okay, what you want to do though is to make sure that they jump further. Okay, so now what happens in swimming, if somebody says my start is poor, but once I'm in, I'm good. So if you want to improve on the start, you first, of course, you need to have good amount of strength, because you want to have force. Because what happens in the starting block is that when you are there at the starting blocks, you are not able to use too much of an eccentric load. You are not able to go back and dive. You have to just here, take your mark, and then there's a sound, that sound comes, that's when you react. So you can't, when somebody says take your mark, whether you go back, some swimmers, who are new, they do that. They think it's like an elastic band. When they think, take your mark, they go back, go. There's almost 2 to 3 seconds in between, they go. It doesn't make any difference if you go back. Okay, they don't understand about the amortization phase. Okay, they just think it's like a rubber band. I've stretched and I go. A rubber band in humans has to be quick. You go back and quick move, fair enough. Okay, but then the danger in swimming is if you go back and try to do it quickly, you might do an early start and then get disqualified. Okay, so what do we teach? How can we make a start better? Build their strength. Okay, let them do things like a squat, a leg press, maybe if sort of squats are too difficult initially, and then get them on to doing, of course, with some base level plyometrics, get them to do depth jumps. Okay, now what happens in a depth jump? there's preloading. So when you jump from a box down and then you move, okay, there's preloading, so the reaction is much better, okay, because you've landed from top. You have to take that load and get eccentrically loaded without going too low. You want to change that into concentric fast. Now if you keep doing that, and then if you just think of the person who's used to doing this, you get them on the blocks. Now when they start, they are used to preloading before the jump, so they are able to produce a lot more force and a lot more distance due to this, what they've been practicing. So depth jumps work, for somebody who wants to improve their starts. Now somebody might say, okay, fine, this is what Mr. Declan Letao said, do depth jumps. Next thing, get all the children jump from 2 feet to 1 feet, whatever. And next thing their knees are messed up. Now why would they be messed up? Because they haven't had the enough landing technique. If they are older, they maybe don't have enough of strength work. So this is where your brains have to come in. You just can't copy that. Somebody says that, oh, to improve swimming starts, do depth jumps, you make them do those without shoes on hard ground. Okay, and you say, but yes, in swimming they don't wear shoes. So there's a lot of thinking that goes behind a good program. Okay, a lot of thinking. And like I've just given two examples of improving a smash, okay, and improving your start. Okay, how you can put, but you have to be thinking. There's no ready-made programs out there, and we all love to have those, right? I mean, of course there are people selling ready-made programs, how to be a champion footballer, how to do this, that, and as if that's it. You take this, go. That ready-made program is like a ready-made prescription. Any problems you have, you just go and sort of start. So there's various movements within swimming, which is such a short sort of event. Hardly sometimes the ones which are 50 meters get over in a few seconds, right? So in those seconds, there's movements though. There's a start. So you are in the air, you dive. There's the underwater kick. You break out, and then you start your whole thing. Now, if you're doing 100 meters, then you turn at the wall. So the swimmer times their push off into the wall. They go in and they come back. So that pushing in will dictate how quick they'll push out and come back. In this, you need to know that's why I have to ask the player, ask the swimmer, which part is it that you want. So is it the turns? So many will say, no sir, everything's good but my turns. So now you know what to work. Okay, then within the turn you have to check at what angle do they go in, how close do they go straight, and because they have to flip. Now when they flip, are they sort of getting into greater than 90 degrees flexion? Is it their quads which is a problem? Is it maybe their core, where they produce power probably with the quads, but the core is still weak? So there's so much thinking to do, and that's the beauty about strength and conditioning, right? There's so much thinking to do. There's so much improvement that can be done specifically for each person, and top coaches are able to do this. Okay? So that's, I think, what we need to understand, that break down the movement, and then ask what part of it specifically you want. Then you're a specialist. Right. But if we just say that, okay, badminton players, we make you do what? Skipping. Skip, or you'll be fast, you'll be good because you've done skipping. Now that person, maybe their calves are not strong at all. They've never done a calf raise, they don't have quad strength, but they're just doing things and doing it with some bad technique. Okay, what are we really teaching them? Okay, so we have to really be clever about breaking down the movement and then breaking it down for that individual person. It can't be that you did this for this person and they improved, so now everybody else does it. Okay, and it's all so tempting, right? We like to have processes, and that's why I've said in lectures too, don't just go for a process, check the person behind the process. Okay.
Absolutely. I think just having spoken, for example, just about the wrist alone, I think we would have discussed that for about 5 to 10 minutes. And that's just one joint or a handful of muscles for one specific movement. And so much thought has to really go into that. So I think that alone shows how complex or how much thinking actually has to go into designing an effective program. Like you said, it cannot be just a template that is put out there saying that if you're a badminton player, do this, or if you're a, sometimes even if they take it one or two levels further, saying that okay, you're a badminton player of this age, do this. I think there is far more thought than even that has to go into designing an effective program.
Because the idea behind us being employed or working with an athlete is to improve physical. That is it, right? If we are improving their physical, then we have done a good job. And some things maybe I'd like to share is where we make mistakes. One is when people sort of win. Somebody wins, we just are happy, like, yes, my player won. Okay, did you contribute? Did their smash improve? Okay, did their tap improve? Did their lungs last long? Or were they just winning because the other person played bad? Or the wind was sort of, kind of, they played more on the side where the wind assisted them, or there were some decisions which were taken. There could be various things. So we have to be very self-reflective, where we need to know that, okay, this is what I have to reflect on. Did I do the job which I was in for physically? And then, even if the player loses, the player also knows, you also know that you've done your job, right? And that is how it has to be. You should actually assess yourself when the player wins and loses both. Not just think that if they win, you've done your job, and if they lose, you haven't done your job. They could have lost, and they could have probably played one of the best matches of their life, okay? And that's okay. And you could have done the best job, and still they lost, and that's what it is. Maybe it's not meant to be, but you can't be just thinking that, oh, if they sort of, lose, everything's failed. Second mistake that I think we make often is, in a class, getting everybody to train together. Okay, this I think is one of the big mistakes, and these are real world issues, right? You go to a gym, you've got maybe 20 students to train. Okay, the whole academy, the center, or the whole batch in various centers that are out there. You could have a huge batch of players, maybe 50 are under you. Now, how do you train all of them? One is, don't think at all, take them in the morning, make them run, do some push-ups, this, that, over. The other is, break the group down first. You've got 20, and like I've said, there'll be physically strong, physically weak, in betweens. Break them down. If they are physically strong, let those people train together, because you can't then do an individual program for each one. So at least let them train together, so we know these are the strong guys. The weak ones, okay, there you might need more attention, because these are the ones who need sort of to improve. And then you have the intermediate in between, right? So then your programming has to be according to that. It makes your life easier, right? It will make it easier. You can't ever say to the weak one that, oh, look at him, how is he doing it? He's doing such good push-ups. And sometimes what happens is, the physically weak need not be the most technically skilled.
Exactly.
Right? Because even within technique, there's the same standard. Some highly technically skilled, some poorly technically skilled, some in between. And mostly one would see that the technically skilled ones will not be physically that great.
Right.
And sometimes it's because they are not that great physically, they are that so reliant on technique. And sometimes the other way, the ones who are technically not so good, rely on their fitness. Okay, in an ideal world, you need somebody who has both. So if you have somebody who's technically very highly skilled, you need to be working on improving their physical part. And on the other hand, you have people who are very natural. They do a bit of a workout and they get very strong. Then you need to know how much to push and when to stop them. You don't just need to push them because they can. Okay, and then you have to ask that fitness also has to help. I mean, teaching a badminton player to do somersaults, just for argument's sake, looks nice, would make some great reels. Okay,
Right.
would that help? So this is where programming comes in. In my case, over the years, so many years I've practiced martial arts, and I've never taught anybody, simply because it would not help. Okay, so these are things where, for program design, we have to leave our own sort of prejudices, our own beliefs away, and always think with a logical mind. Okay, think with something where clarity is there. Okay, and you have to then design the program accordingly. Break down the movement. Then you know exactly what you've done. Your athlete will then know exactly what you've contributed, which leads to a better relationship. Okay, athlete is happy knowing, I wanted this and this is what happened. So if an athlete says, that, okay, when they are going sort of, towards the net, they are not able to lunge and come back quick. There could be various reasons. They just don't have core strength, or maybe they are not able to lunge. Sometimes they have these groin pulls. Badminton players, would have this issue where they sort of play, and sometimes a lot of them, they have these sort of groin strains because there's so much of stretching, right? Now, what do? If somebody is suffering from that, make them do groin strengthening exercises and check up. And there's so many variations within groin, to check which exercises to do. But we have to break down and ask. Sometimes it's just as simple as asking the athlete, what is it that you want? And then give. And that comes from those two principles that I say, observation and listening.
Right.
Observe, so you'll get some idea. Listen to what they say. But don't just come with a program template saying, this is what, okay, here it is on the board. Everybody this, I don't care how you play, but this is my program.
Yeah.
It's like, giving wrong medicines to the wrong patient.
Right. Absolutely. So So now to sort of go beyond just badminton and swimming, uh, I just want to know about these differences, or I would say similarities between certain sports that can be categorized. For example, we have racket sports, or we might have maybe contact or non-contact sports, or certain sports associated with track and field or athletics in general. So where should our focus be when we're sort of addressing similar but maybe not the exact same sports?
I would say we have to just look at all the differences that exist. In a way, there's no similarities in sport. Within sports, if there are so many differences, like a badminton player doubles is so different. There's so much of squatting, and the shuttle comes back faster. You hit a shot, it comes back because there's two people to react, right? So then the positioning: are you going to be near the net? If the person who's behind hits more smashes, there's just so many differences within badminton, right? Now we look at other sports. Somebody thinks that okay, contact sports. If somebody thinks okay, a boxer needs to train the same way as a mixed martial artist, an MMA guy wears gloves which are different. Okay, boxer has padding inside. They are these thick gloves, so it's different. And the boxer will want power coming mainly from the hand. They are not worried about the legs. A mixed martial artist would also need to be kicking. There might be a takedown. So again, there's so much difference there. Okay, comes the difference between racket sports, table tennis, badminton, tennis, right? Three different sports all played with rackets, but are they the same? Okay, the surface is different. Table tennis is played at a higher surface, it's not played on the ground, so the power you're sort of generating is here. The ball is much lighter. Badminton slightly sort of more resistance. Tennis ball has to travel a lot more. The reaction is different. You hit a shot, there's enough time sort of to react, then it comes back again, hit a shot. Not that it's easier, but it's a different type of power that they need. So there's really no similarity, I think, and this is what we have to understand, that sports science is not about sport. And then within sports, it's not like athletics means all athletic training is same. Athletic is 100 meters, 200 meters, 400 meters, different energy systems. Then within athletics, you have a javelin thrower. Okay, then you have a hammer throw.
Right.
The amount of spinning that happens. Now, if somebody, let's say there's a shot putter, does he need to train like a 200-meter athlete, though they all practice around in the same sort of vicinity? So we have to really ask, we have to learn to break down. That's when you become better and you know exactly what you can do. We have to be specialists, not generalists.
Right.
So to answer that question, that there are so many sports, okay, and sometimes people say, that, oh, this person is a sports scientist or a sports science specialist, or strength and conditioning. Strength and conditioning within itself, it's specialization. And then you really give out what is expected, what is needed. You give that makes the difference. And then you are able to provide better service to the athlete. They get the results they want. So even if they lose, they know that, oh, but I was fit.
Right.
And then you've done your job.
Right.
Okay. So I think understanding that all sports and within sports, positions are different. I think we can get that. I think we can create better programs.
Yeah, and I think even for many of the strength and conditioning coaches out there, having this approach really simplifies things, because irrespective of the sport or the movement or the event, your job is to simplify those movements, identify the weakness, and then create a program. Otherwise, I think a lot of times, especially for those who are newer in the field, they get so caught up in templates that their mind is filled with so many different sports, so many different templates. But if you look at it from a movement perspective, I think it becomes a far easier process, actually. Really simplifies things.
Absolutely. Movement, energy systems, muscle contractions, right? Very, very simple, planes of motions. Okay, it makes it simpler.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just a wild goose chase. No, we're just trying to figure out what. And then we'll try to follow other coaches. Then you see something on Instagram or some other social media platform, and then you think like, oh, this is what. So whatever, we try to copy.
Right.
So you, in a way, I think a good strength and conditioning program can't be copied. It has to be invented.
Right.
For that particular program. You're not inventing, something new. There's enough exercises out there, but you're inventing for that particular person to work at that moment, which might change in 1 year.
Right.
Okay, which might change. So you have to invent each time. And I think that's the specialization of a good strength and conditioning coach, who really knows how to create, not copy.
Right. So yes, for all our viewers out there, I hope that this discussion we had really ties in and brings the entire lecture into full circle. So initially you had the theory part, and now you have a practical understanding of what it is to actually do the program design. and what are the factors to consider. So, sort of just to summarize, I think the important takeaway from this should be that your understanding of the sport, the position or the event in the sport, the player, their training history, the goals that they're trying to achieve, all of these are paramount. And yes, let's not forget about safety as an overarching rule, through this entire discussion. So I think once you understand that, not only does it make your programs more effective, it also makes your job easier because you have a lot more clarity now about where is the athlete currently standing at and where you need to get them. And most importantly, how do you do that? So I hope that this discussion has been very, very helpful for all of you out there, especially for the ones who are already working with athletes. I'm sure that the points from today will definitely make you a better coach if you're able to implement them. Thank you for watching.